Greetings hobbyists, this is Artisans of Vool, and in this video we're creating a pouch as a nice introduction into sculpting. So in this video we're going to create something like these sci-fi pouches, something you'd typically find on a space marine or a stormtrooper. Basically if it's a sci-fi trooper, they're likely to have something similar to this. We're going to do this quite stylized because it's for 3D printing, but most importantly this is designed to introduce us to certain sculpting brushes and techniques that we might not have used before. So we'll go through this bit at a time, using no add-ons, so this should be fairly beginner friendly. So what we're going to do is just start by blocking this out, and we'll start with our default cube. I'm just going to S and then Y to get this a little bit thinner so it looks proportionally about right. We'll just S to scale this up a little bit. And then we're going to start with the main bit of this pouch. So what I'm going to do is just tab and go into edit mode. I've got an add-on called machine tools. It just makes it easier for you to see what mode I'm going into. You don't need to use this at all. Just hit tab and any mode will do. So you could be in vertex mode, edge mode or face mode. Go to one of the edges around the side and click Ctrl and R, and that brings us in an edge loop. Click, and then we're just going to drag that up to somewhere about here where our flap is going to be that keeps this closed. Now this is going to be fairly exaggerated in terms of thickness, but we could G and Z that up a little bit more depending on what you want. Then we're going to make an interesting shape for the front, and we're going to use the same thing. We're going to Ctrl and R to put in an edge loop, and then I'm going to scroll up so that we've got two edge loops, click, and that allows us to move it around, but I'm going to right click so it's dead center. Then we can either select these two vertices, or if you want to be in edge mode, you can just click on this edge, G and Z that down, and we've got the sort of flap that you typically get on one of these. Finally, we're going to need to be in face mode for this, so you can come up there or hit 3. We're going to click and hold down shift to click those. I'm going to hit E, and then this will allow us to extrude that out to add some thickness. And again, we're going to exaggerate this slightly to about there. Tab will bring you back into object mode. I need to select it up here, and this is our basic shape. And actually, this is looking fairly okay at this point. But what I want to do is go a little bit beyond what plastic models look like and have some detailing at the side. Normally they can't do that on plastic models, but we can for 3D printing, so we'll do that now. What we're going to do is tab, and we're going to go into, again, any mode. I'm going to click face mode, so you just tab and you should already be in face mode, but if not, click up here or 3. I'm going to select this face, and I'm going to press K for the knife tool. In fact, before I do that, let's hit the X on the gimbal to be perfectly side on, K, and we're going to start cutting. So I'm going to click here, and this is going to allow us to be fairly free with this, but just to be consistent, I'm going to press A, which now locks us. We'll go 30 degrees to about there, come along a bit, click, and then 30 degrees to there, and then hit space to confirm this. Still in face mode, we're going to click that, and we're just going to E to extrude that back, and that will work for showing that there's some sort of hollowing of this pouch. It's just something for our eyes to catch. Now we need to do this on the other side as well, but we're just going to use a modifier for that. So come over here to modifiers, and I'm using an add-on called modifier list. It's easy to get from Blender. You just go to edit, preferences, come to get extensions, type in modifier list. So even if you just get modifier, you'll get this, and you'll have an install button here like these ones do. I've got this installed already, so I don't need it. Just click install, and then you'll be ready to go. You can do this without this, but I prefer this layout. And I want to click add, and I'm going to pick to have a mirror modifier. Now you'll notice that just disappeared this because the mirror modifier converts everything on the plus to the minus. So we've got what was over here to over here. To sort this out, we just need to click flip, but that won't work until we click bisect. So we need to have that all clicked on the X, and then we've got these on both sides, and we can just apply this by coming to this tick. So let's apply that. Now before we go any further, let's just add a final detail here, which is going to be a little button for the front. So just come into front view, shift and A, mesh. I've probably got more options here than you will have, but you'll definitely have a UV sphere, so click that. Let's just S to scale that down, somewhere about there, G and then Z to grab it and bring up on the Z axis. In fact, let's S to scale that down a bit. Click on X, and then we'll G and then Y to bring this forward to somewhere there. Now this looks okay, but we generally don't want to have this combined together on these faces. Don't worry about this, but this idea with this tiny face here is a problem. So what we're actually going to do is come to our side view of X, R to rotate it, and type in 90. And that way we've got these nice parallel edges, basically here, these edge loops that are going around in the same direction as the face that it's going to attach to. Normally we would avoid that by using something like a quad sphere, but this is going to be fine for our purposes. And we can click, right click, and shade that smooth, and that's going to look great. Now do bear in mind for 3D printing, shade smooth doesn't do anything to the print, but these facets are so small, that's going to be fine. Okay, so let's get making this a little bit more like a pouch. This is probably too squared off for our own purposes. What I'm going to do is make duplicates of this so I can show you some different techniques. So Shift and D and then X. And what do I want? 1, 2, Shift and R for another one, and Shift and R for another one. I think that should be okay. I'm going to do another one just to be safe. I think I've only got 4 techniques though. So what we're going to want to do is start rounding these details off, basically the edges. And in fact, actually, we need to do something first. So let's just delete all of these out, and we'll do that before we do anything else. To round these edges off, we need to add some more geometry to this. So you can see we haven't got many vertices here, and we're going to use some sculpt tools. And if I come into the sculpt mode here, for you, that's going to be up here, go to sculpt mode. If I try doing things, it only works off vertices, and there's only a vertex there, and then another vertex there, and one there. So we don't have enough data for this to work off of. So we need to change this. The other problem we've got is if I come to the side, is that you can see that my sculpt brush here is very elongated. This should be a circle, like it is on the front. And the reason this isn't is because we scaled this down in this dimension along the y-axis right at the beginning. So what we're going to need to do is tab into object mode, and what we need to do is press Ctrl and A and apply the scale. If I just press N and come to item, you can see our scaling is all messed up. Our X and Y is the same, which is Y on the front, this is round, but on the side, on the y-axis, this direction, it's about half what it should be. So if we come here, you can see that this thickness is about half on the X as it is on the Z. This is exactly Y. And we don't want that. It means that our brush is going to be messed up. And when we do what we're going to do next, it'll be messed up as well. So we're just going to Ctrl and A, apply the scale, and then if I go into sculpt mode again, as I said, you'll be doing up here, you'll notice that we've lost that problem. Everything's nice and round. Let's hit N to get rid of that. You didn't need that bit for this. And what we're going to do is add more geometry, and we call this remeshing. To do that, we hit R, and this will give us a demonstration of how big the cubes are going to be that we're going to create by remeshing it. So we can have really big. If I just click this and press Ctrl and R, you'll notice this gets very, very faceted. And if I go into vertex mode, you can see those are about the right size of the cubes. That was too big. So in sculpt mode again, let's just R, get that nice and small. Do note the smaller this is, the more effort your computer's going to have to put into modeling. So we generally want to start off quite big and then get smaller and smaller, but at this we're going to go straight into some relatively fine detail, so probably somewhere about there will do. Now that hasn't actually happened yet. We need to press Ctrl and R, and then now it's been remeshed, and you can see we get that slight pixelation. Now at this point I'm going to go into object mode, select these, Shift and D, and then let's X, and then once again Shift R, and then Shift R to repeat that. So anyway, back to this, and we want to soften these edges. We've softened them a little bit just by this process, but we want this to look a little bit more natural, not like it's a metal box. So in sculpt mode, we've got several ways of doing this. The first is that we can use a smooth brush. Now for each of these, I'm going to talk through the positives and negatives of them, just so you're aware of what they are. Let's just scroll this down. You should have this. This is where we keep all of our brushes, but I'm going to get rid of that because I don't want to see it and take up all of this space on my screen, but we'll get around that in a number of ways. Now, for the smooth brush, all you have to do is hold down Shift, and we're automatically using the smooth brush. So you can see here, we're smoothing this out nicely. If we want this to be a bit bigger, we can hit F to make this a bit larger, and we can just smooth this nicely. Now, this is going to look really good. Give a really nice smooth edge to each of these. But if we only wanted to smooth out one edge, this front one, what we'd have to do is sort of leave it here, or if we come onto the side, you'll notice that it starts impacting the side quite a lot, and it doesn't look very nice. So suddenly we're going to have to do this side as well, and you're suddenly stuck doing everything. And if you're going to do everything, there's a better way of doing it. So the smooth brush does work, but there's a better way to do it if you want to smooth everything, and it has this problem on these edges. We've also got some alternative options, so we'll talk through those. Now, to skip objects, if you want to move to a new object to sculpt, just hold your mouse over the new object and hit Alt and Q. It will do this nice little flash so you know that you're on it. To get our brushes up, instead of having this take up loads of space, you can always bring this back with this tiny little arrow that's in the bottom right hand corner and drag it up as much as you want. But if you just press Shift and Space, it shows you all your brushes. So these are all my brushes and some custom ones that I've made myself. And I've got those specifically here. We've got some bullet holes and ones for stitching, and you've got all of your general ones here all broken apart. I'm just going to go to all, or we could just go to brushes, whatever. And then the first one we'll try out is this scrape fill brush. Now what this does is effectively act like you're getting a knife and scraping it along this edge. So if I do that here, you can see it's making quite a sharp sort of scrape. It's got quite a sharp edge to it. It basically looks a bit like a chamfer. And this is a nice option for several things. I'm not sure it's the perfect option here, but it can be pretty good. But you can see here, we're starting to have an effect on this edge. It's not as bad an effect as what was happening over here in terms of distortion, but it is a bit distorted. And we can't do much about that when using this scrape brush. Now let's come over to this one, Alt and Q, and we're going to pick another brush. So Shift and Space. And next we're going to talk about the scrape multiplane. Now I don't quite know what to liken this to, but maybe it's a bit more like sanding something down, especially with like a sponge. It works off of the edges that are coming across it. So we've got these two at 90 degrees. And effectively as I do that, you can see it sort of starts working out that we want to go across this, but it's not as perfectly flat each time. And if we come to here at the edge and start doing this bit, let's just do a few strokes at this. If you want to do less strokes, you can always up the strength, but I often prefer to do multiple strokes than just to do it in one big go. You can see it doesn't distort this edge as much. So this is quite a nice brush for this reason. Oh, one other thing I should say, if we just come all the way back here to the point where we've done nothing. If we're going to be doing things and it's going to be going on both sides, it's quite a nice time saver to turn on here our mirroring. So we want to mirror this across the X. If I then do the same thing, you can see it's doing it on both sides. So that's quite a nice way of doing this. It can cause some slight weirdness if you go over the middle section too much, because as you notice, if I went there and then came here, it hit it twice. So you've got to be a little bit careful where you're going to as the middle. But as I said, this multiplane scrape's quite nice, and again, it affects that edge a little bit less. But we're not actually going to use this because, well, I want to do this to pretty much every edge, with the exception of maybe this line here, which we kind of need to be sharp because it's where this material is folding over. So let's come to this one, Alt and Q, and we're going to cheat a bit. We're going to tell this to smooth off everything. And we do this not using a brush. We actually use one of these other options here, which is a mesh filter. And what this will do is anything that hasn't been marked off, I'll give a quick demonstration of masking off in a second, it will apply a filter or a function to. So we want smooth. And all I'm going to do is click and just drag my mouse, and you can see we're just smoothing all those edges. It's basically like we've used this smooth brush, but it's done it on all surfaces altogether. So that's going to be pretty handy, and I think that looks quite nice, a bit smoother, a bit more organic, like shaped leather. But this bit here doesn't look sharp enough. Now, in a 3D print, bear in mind that this is going to be tiny, you're probably never going to notice that. So we don't really need to do much about it, but I want to introduce some brushes, so we'll just do something with this. And what we're going to do is use our crease polish brush. And if I click that and come in here and just do, well, let's just turn this on to mirrored on the X. We can just do a nice click and drag. I'm just using a mouse for this. I do have a tablet, but this isn't too complicated. And we're just sharpening that out. Let's do the same thing here. There we go. And I think this makes it look a little bit more extreme. You do sometimes get a little bit of an edge around it, so if we just hold down Shift, we can smooth that round here, and we get this nice sort of finish to it. And I think that's a pretty good start for our pouch. We could also use this brush here if we wanted to maybe define something there. And just playing around with this and the Shift brush to smooth works quite well. Let's just define that round here. So we could do that there. Again, I think this is too small for anyone to really ever notice, but I just want you to know that that crease brush is there. So what we're going to do, in actual fact, is get rid of this. I don't think I want this. And I'm just going to Shift and D and bring this across to the side so we've got this smoothing on it. And we're just going to add a couple of wrinkles, just something to make it look a little bit more like it's a material. Now, leather generally doesn't flex very much, especially treated leather. So actually, we probably don't need to do this too much, but there are some options. So let's go into sculpt mode. The first is to just use the draw brush. Now the draw brush is just going to create effectively a raised surface. And the higher the strength, the more the raise. Let's just undo those and turn off our mirroring. So we probably don't want this too high. I again generally prefer to do multiple strokes at a lower strength than doing one big stroke. But maybe just something like this, just going down, will act as a fold. And then I'm just going to F to make this brush a bit bigger, and hold down Shift and just smooth this out, just to make it look a little bit more natural. I'm going to be careful not to hit the edge here. Just keep smoothing this out. And make this just a nice gradual sort of fold that comes from the edge. And there we go. That will sort of do for this. We don't need any more than that. It's just something to remind us that this has got a little bit more flex to it. Okay, so that will do. If we want to, we could go onto the edge and start smoothing here a little bit more, and that will just show that we've got a little bit of movement. Entirely up to you. I'd probably keep that relatively easy just for the sake of 3D printing it and being nice and easy to 3D print. So that's one option. The other thing we've got is some very specific brushes that are meant for fabric. So these could be quite useful. Now, these are all the ones in purple that are down here. And my favourite are probably the drag cloth brush. This is quite useful. But for something like a pouch, I actually prefer this grab planer. Now, if I just F to make this a bit smaller, what this is going to do is when I start clicking, and you'll notice the more zoomed in you are, the different effect it has. But if I come here, let's just actually F to make that bigger, and then I make sure we're sculpting on this one, so let's just Alt and Q. If I drag here, we get this line, and it starts adding in folds. Again, let's turn off the mirroring. So let's zoom in here, add in some nice big folds. Okay, so it's really fun to play around with. The more you zoom in, the sort of the bigger the folds are. And we can always smooth more out around here, so we just get these main folds, something like that. We can always do a little bit more, something there, and just keep it nice. No, that's not zoomed in enough. There we go, something there. Let's just do a little bit more here, there, and just moving this backwards and forwards gives some really nice effects. So there we go. Okay, let's just smooth this out. We just get some nice creases. Now again, at the scale we're talking about, I think this is not really going to be visible. So it's not something we need to do too much about. But it is an option. No, that was going into there, so let's just come back in. But it is a nice option just to create some fun and just something that's a bit more visible. So that's a really nice brush. Now, I do have a particular use for this as well, which we'll mention. We'll actually do this maybe here. So let's just come and look at this one. So Alt and Q. And what we're going to do is pretend that there's something in this pouch, something that's adding some weight to it, whatever it might be. And to do this, what I'm going to do is just get our box mask and select a bit of an area here, something like that, and mask it. Now we don't want this going all the way to the back, so we're going to unmask a section of this. So for that, we're going to go to our mask here. Let's F to make this a bit smaller. And we need to, well, if we click, this will mask more. We need to do the opposite. Two ways of doing that. We can click this minus, plus adds more, minus takes away. And that's true for all of our brushes. If I shift and space and get a draw brush, we can do a draw here, which is sticking out. If I hold down Control and do it, it draws in. So that does the opposite. We can also change it up here. Let's come back to our mask. So all I'm going to do is hold down Control and just get rid of all this mask that I don't want. So something like there. And then we're just going to move this so it sticks out a bit. So what I'm going to do is come down here, and we actually have a move option. but we want to move the bit that's masked, not everything else. So I'm just going to press Ctrl and I to invert the mask, and then I'm just going to drag this and pull it, and maybe pull it down a bit as well. Maybe a bit less than that there. So that will do. So this is going to be our chunky object, our bit of weight that's at the bottom of this. Maybe this needs to be a bit stuck out more. Okay. Then we're going to go back to our brushes. Control and I again to invert this. And I'm just going to smooth this all off. In fact, actually, let's just Alt and M to get rid of all of this. And just smooth this off. So this is our bit that's a bit of extra weight that's in this pouch that's distorting it here. So it's sticking a little bit further forward. Now I find this a great use for our cloth brushes, and for this I actually quite like the pinch point brush. We can just drag there and pinch that in. Now that probably is a bit too much. Let's just zoom in a bit, maybe down our strength, and just do something there. Just pulling onto that corner, and pulling onto that corner. Smooth it down a little bit, particularly here where it's going to be more taut, and I think that looks quite nice. Can do the same thing in this corner. Pinch and pull. No, too far zoomed out. Pinch and pull. There we go. Smooth it a bit there. And we'll do the same thing here. Pinch and pull. There we go. Smooth it a bit there. So that's quite a nice effect there for something where there's a bit of extra weight in our pouch. We could always go in and exaggerate this with the draw brush if we wanted to. So come into draw, maybe F to make that smaller and sort of focus on these lines. And use the smooth brush to just smooth that in out towards the edge. But this gives us a nice realistic, actually let's just F and click on that, starting point where we can go from. So anyway, that covers the basics of effectively sculpting pouches. There's nothing more to it than that, really. We've covered a nice range of brushes, especially focused on the cloth brushes and some examples of using them, and just a few little tricks that you might want to try when sculpting different cloths and different objects. I hope you found that useful. If you did, please hit that like button. If you're a more experienced sculptor and you want to throw out some tips and tricks for the people that are watching this, then feel free. Or if you are someone that sculpted a little bit but I've shown something new, then again, please throw in something in the comment section. It really helps with the video being spread around. If you want to support the channel any further, there is a Patreon page linked in the description, where you get these videos a week early, ad-free, and other great perks as well, like being part of the channel Discord. I hope to see you in the next video, and have a great day.